You know, when you read the Bible, pretty much anywhere in the Bible, from cover to cover, start to finish, there's sort of this one central idea, and even maybe a central word, if you will, and it's the word faith. Right? It's the word faith. Many people are called faith, and it's this idea of trusting God in all kinds of different circumstances. And as we've been in this series of how God grows our faith, we've been talking about trusting God to give us big faith. Say that. Ready? Go. Big faith. Only a couple of you said it like I did. Big faith. But that's what God desires from us as Christ followers. Now, if you're just kind of plugging in, this isn't saving faith that we're talking about in this series. It isn't, I need to do these things so that God loves me, so that maybe I'll go to heaven one day. Newsflash, that's a done deal. God sent Jesus Christ to die to pay the price for the one thing that keeps you and I out of heaven, and that's sin. He paid the price for all of that. So we have this wonderful hope and this beauty in the gospel of being able to know that when I die, when you die, as you believe in Jesus, you're going to be in heaven. So now, we're not there yet. How do I live on earth? How does God grow big faith in me? And the Old Testament, you know, if we kind of look at the whole thing, it describes God proving he is trustworthy and humanity breaking that trust, wanting to do things on our own. And then the New Testament, Jesus comes along and says, I'm going to repair this, the whole thing, the same way it was broken. And what was broken again between us and God was trust, was this trust issue. So we've been talking about the 5 things, and you're probably sick of seeing this slide. You probably wake up and have nightmares about it. I know I do. But these are 5 things that we see, not in a Bible verse anywhere, but as a general theme of how God grows your faith and my faith through our life experiences. So we talked about practical teaching, where it's not just about reading the Word, but it's applying, it's doing what we have read and know that creates wisdom. Providential relationships, those people that show up in your life are like, how did I get in your circle, or vice versa? And that person challenges us, and our faith grows through that relationship. Private disciplines last week we talked about, and those are those things that we do kind of in private. Nobody else is around. And we talked about prayer. We talked about fasting. You know, we talked about different things around those private disciplines. Today we'll talk about personal ministry, and next week we're going to talk about pivotal circumstances, those things that happen that are bigger things, the good things, but mainly the bad things, the hard things that we go through in life, that kind of that take us and give us the opportunity, but push us toward leaning in to having faith in God, because nobody else is going to save us in that situation. So we're going to talk about that. So let's talk about personal ministry. What is personal ministry? How many of you are in ministry? Well, ministry, biblically, it isn't going to the seminary, getting a degree, getting the theological training even, and working in a church, right? That's not what biblical ministry actually is. If you're a believer, you're in ministry, whether you've had training or not. If you believe in Jesus as your Savior, guess what? You're a minister. No, we're not going to pay you from church. When I was just into the seminary, this really bugged me. I didn't want my kids thinking that what was taking daddy away from the family was ministry, or even the church. And so we always made sure that our kids knew that dad was in church work, what I do and Holly and others. We're in church work, but we're also in this global thing that we all share in, which is called ministry. Does that make sense? What I do 9 to 5, 9 to 9, 24/7, it feels like, is church work. But it's also part of what I do as a ministry. If you're a believer, you're in ministry. In the Bible, that word is deaconon, sounds like, and where we get the word deacon from, or deaconess. You've heard those if you've been around in church. And it simply means to serve, right? If you are serving outside of your comfort zone, especially, which we'll talk about, you are in ministry. So personal ministry is this. It requires faith because it often puts you in situations where you feel totally unqualified and totally inadequate. How many of you are feeling inadequate right now this morning? Look, at nobody's raising their hand. It's like, do I have to? Yeah. There's so many ways we feel inadequate. And it's in these moments when you must rely on God's strength rather than your own. It's in those moments that your faith really grows. I mean, he often gives you those promptings to say yes to opportunities that make you think, I can't do this unless God shows up. You know, around our church here, and if you're a visitor or a guest, you can just kind of close your ears because it's a little, I don't want you to know about this part of our church. But we are blessed and have the spiritual gift of giving opinions as a church. We have a lot of opinions. Be in leadership teams or whatever, there's tons of opinions. There's an abundance of them. What we should be doing, what should happen, what about now our lower level? What about remodeling the offices or the sanctuary? What about our kids and youth ministry? And guess what? These ideas, these opinions, most are pretty good. You know, most we can go, oh, those are pretty good. But to be asked to actually put some of those ideas in motion, oh, preacher, I just have the ideas. I'll pray for you who actually put it into practice. I just have the ideas. I see that our kids in youth ministry just need a few more hands to be in the room, but that's for someone else. I've already done that. I'm too old to be doing that. I know that I can help move a slider on a soundboard or sing or play, but I'm too busy to put in an hour on Sunday, even though I'm here already. I don't know, Bountiful Basket, serving more and more people year after year, but I'm afraid to help people who might be different from me. You know, I know that some of our elderly folks are struggling with loneliness, and they just need a card or a visit or a phone call. But I just don't know what to say. We're all good at these excuses, right? And I'm being a little bit harsh on us because our congregation actually is really good at being deacons and deaconesses, serving, stepping into. We're good at that. But what I'm talking about in personal ministry is that consistent personal ministry in which God moves you out of your comfort zone, maybe working in your gifted zone, how God's gifted you, but out of your comfort zone to serve in a way that you just need God to show up every single day. And here's why this is important. When you think about being in those situations, you know, you get a little afraid. When you think about being asked to be with a 7th grade boys small group on Wednesday nights, that's scary. When you think about something like that, you think about what could happen, but not what actually might happen. We think and we project and we get afraid. And so we back out and we miss out on partnering with God in changing the life of one person, many people, even the world. But more so when we back out of ministry because we're afraid or we have excuses and we think, you know what, I don't want to have a personal ministry. I'm busy, I'm tired, and those kinds of things. You miss out on an opportunity to grow your faith. And it doesn't matter how old you are, how young you are, God is constantly calling us into ministry, into serving some way. And we go through phases of ministry. Sometimes, maybe right now, it's like, man, I've served since Jesus went to heaven. I'm just tired. That's fine. But remember, God is constantly, as long as you as a Christ follower have breath in your lungs, you're in ministry. And it's an opportunity to grow. And I believe me, I get it. I'm trying not to be harsh on you. When I started, when Kelly and I started Summit Community Church in Phoenix, I was happy at Woodbury Lutheran, my first call. All of our friends and our kids were there, and we were just enjoying being together, and it was a good ministry out there. And then a friend calls and says, you know what? west side of Phoenix, it's growing like crazy. We need a church out there. And we want you to come out and start a church from scratch. And that means no people. And I'm like, that's door knocking, right? Yep, from scratch. And I did not want to do it. I said no, even on the plane. And we were on the plane after the visit to see the area, and Kelly's holding my hand, and I'm looking out, and we're quiet between the two of us, which is rare. And she squeezes my hand really hard. I have the scars. And she says, "We're going, aren't we?" And I said, "Yeah. We're leaving something that's comfortable and known and enjoying to do something really, really hard. And if this is going to work, it's only by God's grace that it does." Maybe you've had that example or that experience. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at that gospel lesson and see, many of you have a personal ministry where it's a consistent thing. It's serving people. It's challenging, but you know God is working in and through you. We're going to take a look at the feeding of the 5,000. We're going to look at 5 aspects of having a personal ministry that grows your faith that you may have not have thought of before. And if you have a personal ministry that you're doing, these hopefully will strengthen you. If you're not doing anything, hopefully these will motivate you to at least consider something. So there's 5 great things about personal ministry or aspects that describe a personal ministry. First one is this: a personal ministry requires availability, right? This isn't a Bible verse, this is the summary of the Bible verses. Jesus withdrew by boat to a remote place, but crowds followed him on foot. Seeing them, he had compassion and healed them. He didn't run away. Here come the crowds, I'm running away. He turned around, stepped right into their hurt, even though he was hurting. So ministry often happens when it's inconvenient. Don't you love that? Ministry often happens when it's inconvenient, but being available allows God to use you. Second one, I'm going through these pretty quick. Second one is this: personal ministry highlights your inadequacy. And again, like I said, we all love to feel inadequate, don't we? You know, that evening when Jesus had gathered and all the people came, the disciples urged Jesus to send the crowd away for food, but he replied, you feed them. And they objected. They tried to get out of the thing. They said, hey, we only have 5 loaves and 2 fish. And the point is this: the disciples, I think, felt inadequate. I think they kind of used the 5 loaves and 2 fish. That's a reality. But these guys are fishermen mainly. They don't go in front of groups of 5,000 plus. I think they were afraid to step into the crowd. But God often calls us to tasks that expose our limitations. In, quote, personal ministry, inadequacy is an opportunity for your faith, though. When you feel weak, he is strong. When we acknowledge our insufficiency, we make room for God's sufficiency in that situation. And eventually, on your Christian journey, there might be a time when you're like, I've been a Christian forever, but there's just something missing. Like I go to a Bible study, I apply it, I do all those other things, but there's just something missing. And you sense God calling you to serve, and it's not out of guilt. It isn't a guilt thing, but it's saying, it's like God saying, I want you to do that. Just like he did with the disciples. Maybe that sense of inadequacy right now is actually an invitation by God to get out of the boat like Peter did, see what God can do in and through you if you just say, I'll take a first step. I don't know if you know the name Brian Ingram. He's a local chef here in the Twin Cities, and he started what's now called Purpose Restaurants, Purpose-Driven Life. So he's a strong believer, and he started a restaurant, came from the restaurant world, started a restaurant downtown St. Paul because he wanted to give hope to people. So he started Hope Breakfast Bar. Anybody heard of Hope Breakfast Bars? A couple of you? Yeah, there's like 6 of them now in the Twin Cities. He has multiple other restaurants. So he started Hope Breakfast Bar with the idea with great food, and it is great food, but also to provide opportunities for marginalized people, if you want to call it that, people who are ex-cons who can't get a job, people, convicts, that's what cons, you know what I'm saying, post-jail, who just, people won't hire them, people with maybe some slight autism or mental disability, something like that. He wanted to provide a place where these people can work and serve and give back to the community. So he started Hope Breakfast Bar in St. Paul. In September of 2019, starts this restaurant. Little event happened in 2020, and so he's stuck now with a restaurant forced to be closed with a ton of food in this restaurant. So he and his wife just said, well, let's cook it up and give it to the homeless folks in the area, which there are a lot in the first restaurant. So they started cooking it up, they put the word out. That's where Kelly and I got to meet them and know them, and so we helped distributing food, and they just served and served. And from that, God exploded those restaurants. Like there's one in Woodbury, there's one in Edina, there's one all over the place, and they're great. And it's a ministry. But when you talk to him, and you may have seen it in testimonies or when he's interviewed, his main thing is, I am so inadequate. I have no idea what I'm doing, which isn't really good to hear from your boss. I have no idea what I'm doing, but he stepped into it to see what God could do. So it highlights your inadequacies. Next one. Personal ministry invites you to partner with God, right? Jesus involved the disciples in the miracle by asking them to distribute the food. Ministry is about participation with God. God does the supernatural, and we do the possible or impossible. We just step forward, right? God doesn't need us. God doesn't need us. But he invites us to participate in his work to grow not only the faith of the other person, but to grow our faith. Number 4, personal ministry reveals God's power and faithfulness. You could probably point this out in the story of the feeding of the 5,000. Because the disciples said, all right, we don't get it, but we're going to start doing it, God used their availability, their willingness to really do a miracle, which points to God being the one who's all-powerful, who can do anything. You can probably recall maybe when you said yes to serving and having a personal ministry, and you're like, this turned out way better than I can ever imagine. You know, you said yes to a consistent thing, and you were afraid, and it kind of turned out okay. I have that feeling every Sunday morning. Like, oh my goodness, is this going to go? Is this going to fly? But you said yes, and looking back, it was just an amazing time. Maybe it was serving in youth. Maybe it was a mission trip. Maybe it was serving at a men's or a women's event, and you have a ministry now. And then the last one is this. Actually comes from Philippians 2. Personal ministry transforms you, which is a great thing, and the person whom or the people whom you serve. So Philippians 2:4 says this, don't look out for your own interests, but take an interest in others too. You must have the same attitude that Christ Jesus had. And what was that attitude? Well, though he was God, he did not think of inequality with God as something to cling to. Instead, he gave up his he was God. He gave it all up. And he took the humble position of a slave and was born as a human being. It transforms you. Personal ministry changes you. And serving those who just might need a little spiritual boost transforms both that person and the person who is doing the serving, which is you. I'm going to play a testimony of someone in our congregation who you'll recognize almost immediately, who you see almost every Sunday, about a ministry, a personal ministry that they have and how it's been impacting not only the people, but him as well. So watch this.
Hello, I'm Kevin Seifring. I've been a member here since 1995 when my family moved here from North Carolina, so 30 years. Well, when I was a little kid, ever since I was about 2, I really just loved music. I used to stand on the back seat, this is before car seats, and sing when my mom played the radio. And I could sing every song that came on the radio. I knew all the words when I was a little kid, and just it kind of grew. I never said I was a great singer or anything, but I always have loved it. So I've just always been members of choir and that kind of thing. And back about maybe 10 years ago, I was a member of a small group here at Living Christ, and we had an idea to do a ministry where we would go out and do like sing-along events at Auburn Manor Nursing Home in Chaska. And so we did, the first time was at Christmas, and we sang Christmas carols, and then that went so well that I made up some books with some songs that people knew and some hymns and things. And our small group would go and have a sing-along event where we'd pass out books and everybody would sing. And they really went well, and people just loved it. And then our small group kind of disbanded slowly, and I figured out that I really didn't need a group like that. I could do it myself, often with Sonia, my wife, helping out. But the two of us did a lot of just sing-along events, and my books grew, and I got a little more professional, and it was like, gosh, I just do all kinds of things. And my biggest thing I do is I DJ for dances for adults with disabilities. So it's just a hoot. I set up speakers, and I have good quality speakers for that kind of thing, and then I DJ the dance, but mostly I just get out on the dance floor and dance like crazy with a bunch of mostly developmentally disabled adults who just love it. So I end up just exhausted at the end of the night because I dance the entire night, and you don't get a lot of chances to dance. I love dancing too, and so it's really fun, and people just get so much joy out of it. And when it started dances, we'd get 25 or 30 people, and now we get 50 or 60 at a lot of the dances. So it's just kind of grown, and it's absolutely amazing, the smiles and the people that come up to me after events, and just sometimes it's the clients themselves, sometimes their parents or their guardians and different things, and they just thank you so much for doing this stuff, and they just, oh, when's the next thing? They are just so excited about it, and you're like, okay, I'm really doing something that these people just really latch onto and love, and because they really want to come back. And like I said, I do a lot of sing-along, and I when I do sing and I play the guitar, I always bring an extra microphone so people from the audience can come up and sing with me. And some of the talent level of these people is really variable. But it's just so much fun. It just makes a huge smile if you can get somebody singing Elvis Presley or something, and it's just you can't not have a good time when these people are just smiling and laughing and so uninhibited that they want to sing with you. Well, these people, again, they have a lot of challenges in their lives. A lot of times they're kind of lonely. They sit at home watching TV. They're sometimes in group homes, sometimes with parents and whatever, and they don't have a lot of social interaction and not a lot of joy in their life, but they can get out maybe once, twice a week and do events, that they go to, and where they are with their peers, and it just, again, it's maybe the big bright point in their lives. And so just to give them joy and happiness in otherwise, lives that may be a little, they can be a little dreary. Sometimes people that are completely nonverbal, that never speak sentences to anybody ever, but when you sing, they will start singing. Another thing, this is a story that just really grabbed at my heart. I was doing a Christmas show at a nursing home where I was singing familiar Christmas hymns, and a lot of times at the end, like we always do, we end with Silent Night. And so I was playing Silent Night on the acoustic guitar and singing, and looking out, and there was a lady in the front of the group there who's, again, completely nonverbal. I've seen her so many times. She never speaks, but I looked at her and she had just tears coming down her cheeks. I've never seen anything from her, but it's like, I was playing Silent Night, and I'm like, oh, how do you continue singing? It's choking me up. I'm trying to sing, but it's like, this lady's crying. It's making me cry. So you just really know that music can sometimes really pull at people's heartstrings.
And isn't that true? Music can pull at people's heartstrings, but God can pull at people's heartstrings through you. through your personal ministry. As an aside, God has developed that personal ministry for Kevin into an actual business now that he goes and is working like crazy. You look good in flip-flops, by the way. Yeah. You and I are called to be the light and the hope and the hands and the feet of Jesus in our communities, in our world, in our families, in our school. And it takes just the first step, like Kevin did, like Patty and all of her volunteers do. Just the first step, and see what God can do. That's what personal ministry is about, because as much as you're helping people who desperately need it, or people who are lost and just need one step forward, as much as you're helping them, God is building faith into you. And so personal ministry deepens your humility, strengthens your compassion, and deepens your dependence on God. And it's one of the most rewarding things you can do. So how do you get started? Ask one question. What breaks my heart? What breaks my heart? Is it youth who are so lost? Is it an adult who is going through such a difficult time? Is it something here at church where you want to plug in because there's a team and you know that you're helping further the gospel through our church? What is it that breaks your heart? Listen to that, because as you do, that just might be God's invitation for you to step into and be a minister of the gospel. Amen.